My name is Adriel Desautels, and I was just talking on Smarter Online Safety, or part of the podcast, rather. So thanks for having me. We covered everything from IoT devices like air fryers to your home routers to the drones that you might be buying for your children, and the very real risks that they pose to you as the consumer. Also talked about some pretty simple things that you can do to mitigate those risks and prevent yourself from becoming one of the statistics, or at least hopefully prevent yourself from becoming one of those statistics. Please check out the podcast. I hope you find it informative. It was a lot of fun.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Smarter Online Safety Podcast. I'm your host, Jocelyn King, and I am thrilled to be with you today. We have an amazing guest to bring you some great insights and drop some knowledge. Adriel Desautels has over 20 years of professional experience with information security. And in 1998, Adriel founded Secure Network Operations, which was home to the Snowsoft research team, and they gained worldwide recognition for their vulnerability research work, which played a pivotal role in helping to establish today's best practices for responsible disclosure that is adhered to across all the corporations and government and everything that helps protect you and me as consumers. And while running Snowsoft, Adriel created the zero-day exploit acquisition program, and he's also provided expert witness and testimony in U.S. federal court. He has appeared in many interviews, books, and news outlets, including Forbes, The Economist, Bloomberg, the Viceland cyberware documentary speaking about the zero-day exploit market, and also by Gizmodo, which wrote a biography featuring him titled Snake Oil Salesmen Plague the Security Industry, but Not Everyone is Staying Quiet, where he publicly challenged aspects of the cybersecurity industry. He's also been recognized in several authoritative books, and he's been a keynote speaker at some of the top cyber conferences, including InfoSec, and was a panelist at Black Hat. And he speaks regularly with CEOs, CIOs, and CISOs on subjects ranging from the value of threat protection to IoT devices and the risks that they pose, which is what we're going to delve into today. Needless to say, he is highly accomplished, highly regarded, and I'm highly grateful he has joined us on our podcast today. Welcome, Adriel.
Thank you. It's definitely my pleasure. Looking
So
forward to
great.
this.
Well, we have not yet dived into IoT and online safety for our listeners. So this is great. This is some good, juicy topics to cover. And so with that said, I'd love to lay out some of the basics for our listeners. You know, when most people hear about, oh, I need to protect my connected devices, they naturally think, of their phone and their computer. But the majority of people stop there, and they don't think about smart devices like TVs and refrigerators and 100 other electronics connected to their system that could be a point of entry for hackers gaining or people gaining any kind of data on them without their knowledge. So could you just lay the foundation for us of IoT devices and even what it stands for
Yeah.
some people who don't know?
Yeah. So IoT, right? The Internet of Things, which I think is a terrible name. It should be the Internet of Devices or something. But
Right.
anyways, it's effectively anything that can connect to the internet that is not necessarily a computer system, laptop, whatever.
Mhm.
They can get an IP address and will somehow communicate and interact. It could be your refrigerator. It could be an alarm system.
Mhm.
It could be toys, which there's actually a lot to say about that.
Mhm.
Even your cable modem, your router that the providers provide you with, that's also an IoT device. Um, Unfortunately, most of the IoT devices that are out there today are implemented, or I guess these devices are connected to the internet for a matter of convenience and simplicity.
Mhm.
And that really is the antithesis of good security.
Right, right. I guess online safety is really about finding that sweet spot, and it's different for everybody, but between being safe and not having to jump through too many hoops and overcome too many hurdles in order to just
Yeah,
log in or or live your busy daily life. So that's great. Thank you for pointing that out. So what protections are in place for people that they don't have to worry about? And we're kind of talking about the macro level, like companies that are creating these devices and standards that are required even by consumer organizations. What is in place that are safeguarding the consumer base?
In terms of actually protecting consumers, very little.
Right.
I mean, case in point, a close friend of mine, I'll say it, Kevin Finisterre, he's done a lot of research on toys, drones specifically, right? Which
Mhm.
technically is also an IoT device because they
Right.
connect to the internet and so on. But this is just one example where drones, in his case, found that they were collecting an abundance of information and sending this information back to China, specifically back to the CCP.
Mhm.
And this is something that everybody and their kids had. You know, then you have other IoT
Wait,
devices
wait. So
like,
just so we're clear, you've got 100,000 people or 100 million people, since there's 330 million of us in the US,
yep,
buying things that are the gift that your child really wants for their
sure,
birthday or their holiday or whatever, and you're using it and it's a toy, and you're of course looking at what's the joy that this is bringing, and
yeah,
smile it's putting
yeah,
on my child's face. But that very thing is is recording you. Like
hugely dangerous.
Even Roomba vacuums. Most cybersecurity professionals do not have them because they have cameras on them. So
They
they're
do,
going around your house with a camera on, and we don't think of
yeah,
that. We think of it as a vacuum, right?
right.
So
So one of the
what
biggest
else should people think of there?
I mean, one of the biggest issues, and I guess a great example to continue on drone road, really. So everybody knows the company DJI. They're in the news for this very thing, right?
Mhm.
If you look at some of the information that's been taken, it's wireless configurations, passwords, photographs and videos that the drone sees they're flying. So the information that these toys are mapping out are really complete geographic footprints along with network information and things like that.
Mhm.
You have your home modems, for example, not particularly safe. Those things get compromised all the time, and they're used as relay points to bounce from one system to the next to attack something. You have everything. You have refrigerators, you have your Roomba devices, you have your thermostats. I mean, you name it.
You have your
Um,
TV, and you have a lot of things that have cameras to actually
you have cameras,
surveil
like
you. You have
literally
cameras everywhere.
cameras.
You have cameras
Yeah.
everywhere in your house surveilling you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even your home security systems, I mean, your home security systems can be hacked pretty easily. We've done it accidentally a few times actually
Mhm.
during penetration tests, and you can see everything that you shouldn't see on somebody's home. Um, and again, it's because these devices are really deployed and created for convenience without much by way of security. And I think there's sort of a bit of a misunderstanding that goes to that too. I think that the manufacturers of these devices don't think about these things as devices that are going to be high profile targets or are going to be things that would necessarily be of interest to threat actors. Uh, but they're not really thinking in the context of how threat actors operate,
Right.
right?
So
These
all these
devices,
manufacturers are not malicious themselves, but they're not thinking about the fact that it's a Trojan horse for hackers to get into
yeah, they,
their buyers with.
yeah, exactly. I mean, what we see time and time again, just when talking to different, vendors, customers, doesn't matter really who, when people focus on security, they seem to focus on the thing that might be attacked, or like what the most important end goal is to the customer, and they forget, or they to their customers, but they forget about the entire ecosystem, right? So um, a really simple example of something, right? You have an online banking website, right? And you want to protect your online banking data. And this is the same with IoT devices. Well, you're going to think, all right, we should test the website and make sure it's secure, right? You can't break into it. Uh, but all the data that the attackers are after sits someplace in the cloud or in a data center. People often don't think about testing the cloud, and they don't think about testing the people that have access to that environment, right?
Mhm.
So sometimes it's as simple as just manipulating somebody via email. You get full access. You never attack the application, but you still get all the data, right?
And so then there's no alert either because there officially hasn't been an attack, but
Yeah.
but all the information's been downloaded.
Yep. And
Mhm.
so when it comes to IoT devices, people look at those devices and they say, well, these might not, house sensitive information. They might not They might not be interesting targets because it's not like you're going to get financial data or whatever it might be, but they don't think about necessarily the proximity these things are to other sensitive devices, or, like I said earlier, the fact that they can be used as sort of a landing pad to launch attacks.
Right.
We had an incident where we were hunting down some people that went after a customer of ours, and when we began to look at all the source IPs for all of the attacks, right, where these guys are coming from, everything was coming from a home router, and all of these routers were compromised. Well, we ended up tracing from the router out to two different companies back down to Russia. Um, so it was really sophisticated, but the vulnerability of those devices, which are IoT devices, is what helped to facilitate large financial fraud. Um,
Wow. So what did that mean to the individual user? So somebody who's listening who goes, "Oh my gosh,
yep.
I have a router in my house." Their heart's racing a little bit right now, or their blood pressure's going up a couple knots there. What should they be thinking of and doing so that they can protect themselves in this crazy time that we live in?
Yeah, the answer is it depends, but at the very least, one of the biggest shortcomings or the biggest mistakes that home users make is uh, they don't realize, it's not even they don't do it, they don't realize that they have to keep these routers and these endpoints and their devices up to date,
Hmm.
right? I mean, people deploy things like, they'll connect the refrigerators, their routers, the Roombas, like we talked about. Um, and then once they're connected, they might forget about them, or they, might see an annoying pop up, someplace that says, hey, deploy this latest update, but they don't want to because everything is working fine. That's a
Hmm.
mistake, because typically that means that there's something that is potentially a vulnerability, right? That will be fixed in this next update that people already know about.
Hmm.
So if you're not fixing what's already been deployed and what people already know about, you're leaving it open for the bad guys. And mind you, the bad guys also see the alert. They know that something has been published, and they count on you not fixing it.
Right, right. In fact, let's temporarily switch gears for a moment, because one of the things that put you on the map was you were talking about the fact that that publishing what the vulnerabilities were, well, you know where I'm going with this.
Yep, I do.
Could you tell people the story?
Yeah. So for a while, I was absolutely for disclosure, right? Full disclosure. So you'd find a vulnerability in a piece of technology. You'd work with a vendor to get things published. They could push a fix, then they would they push the fix, and their customers would have it, but the customers wouldn't actually patch, or they wouldn't fix the issues. And um, we've seen this in critical infrastructure. In fact, I had a conversation with somebody that said, yeah, we decidedly don't patch our systems because patching might introduce instability, and we can't afford that because we're a water treatment plant. Okay. you know so what ends up happening, though, when you do responsible disclosure and you try telling everybody, hey, there's a vulnerability here, you have to fix it, is you tell the bad guys about it, and the bad
Right.
guys respond to it, reverse engineer the patch, whatever it is, it turned into a weapon faster than the good guys fix things.
Well, let's face it, the
um,
number one audience of all these disclosures is the cybercrime community, and
yep.
they're the first to take action.
Yeah, absolutely.
While other people may go,
Yep.
hours, days, weeks, months, years without knowing. I mean,
Years.
I talk to people who, when I ask them, like they'll set their phone for auto updates and their computer for auto updates. But then when I
Hmm.
ask them, well, when was the last time you updated, your modem or your router software? And they don't even know they don't even know what their password is. And generally it's
Right.
still the initial, four numbers, 911,
Yeah.
that's on the bottom of their machine that came in the package. Or, somebody, a Geek Squad type person, came in and installed it. So that person may have their password and they don't. So people forget that they've got this major door in,
Yeah.
and they're not guarding that, but they're busy. It's kind of like, there was a movie where the person was always locking their gate, but they had no fence, so they're
Right.
walking out the gate and they have no fence.
Yeah.
So I think the average person does that. So people who are listening, and bringing this out, now we're talking about this modem still in their house. And let's say somebody's going, "Oh my gosh, I don't remember the last time," or it's been over a year. well, there's probably been multiple updates come out and the bad guys know about it and stuff.
Yep.
So this person is a sitting duck, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And they're not even a sitting duck. It's not a matter of if. It really is a matter of when, because the tools that are used, once these once these vulnerabilities are found, if they're something that can be exploited or leveraged from the internet, uh,
Mhm.
these tools are built into other tools that kind of scan or scour the internet for these vulnerable systems automatically.
Yeah.
And so if you have one of these systems, there is probably a computer out there somewhere looking for that system that's vulnerable, and eventually it's going to find you.
I'm
And
really glad you brought that up because one of the things when people are looking at like whether to take a training or not, they tend to think, well, I'm not, I'm not a high profile person. I don't make a lot of money. I'm not really probably a target. And they don't realize that it's
they're a
all
target.
automated and they're actually have probably thousands, hundreds, if not thousands of attacks against them every single day.
Oh
It's
yeah,
just that there hasn't been one successful yet. And so could you talk a bit about that? Because I think a lot of people are not protecting themselves because they have a false sense of security, which is they don't think they're important
oh
enough
yeah,
to get hacked.
yeah, and that extends well past IoT actually. So yes, with their home devices and all that, absolutely patch, maintain things, be smart, but they also trust the people that they work with, right? They trust banks, they trust major corporations that are
Mhm.
responsible for their credit, right?
Mhm.
They trust healthcare institutions. Um, these businesses are breached left and right, and
Mhm.
what they are doing for security is ineffective. If it
Right.
was effective, and if all of these solutions that they were using actually prevented the things that they alleged to prevent, all of this would be a thing of the past, right?
Mhm.
I think I like saying, if antivirus software actually worked, if it prevented, malware, there would be no more malware. That's not the case. Malware just evolves. Antivirus technology and anti-malware technology is always playing catch up.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing for every single defensive technology out there. So if
Right.
you're a consumer, I mean, you could be a farmer that does nothing on the internet, but you have digital information because everything's digitized. Your information will be compromised at some point,
Right.
and it probably already is. You're probably totally findable.
Right. And
Um,
even no, I know every year it's roughly the same number every year, but every year, the reports come out and it's always like 82% of all corporations,
yeah,
admitted there was some data breach. And then, as we know, the non-funny joke in the cybersecurity community is, well, the other 18% just don't know it.
that's right. They don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you
Um,
have to, so how do, so people, I think, so your advice is that people need to switch from thinking that, well, I'm being protected by these big corporations that have my data to actually seeing them as the source of
Part
the
of the risk.
leak that's going to
Yep.
create a threat. And so that's why you need to
Absolutely.
take care of yourself more than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to be very aware of what information you're giving to anybody,
Okay.
because they don't exist in terms of they are going to protect me. They don't exist. That group of magical protective unicorns, they don't exist,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, the compliance isn't security, and a lot of people will flaunt compliance, and so people feel safe giving them information because they comply with some standard.
Hmm.
It's not security. Um, yeah, so you definitely have to watch everything you do, and when you provide information to any third party, you have to assume that that information will somehow be compromised at some point.
Right.
Um, and there are different types of things that you can do, to kind of keep track of who has what and what leaks your information, really came out of. So, for example, Apple offers this pretty cool feature, Hide My Email, where it generates a unique email address, right? And it goes back to your main email address. So, if you sign up for a website, or whatever you're buying something online, use something like Hide My Email, create an address that's unique for that one application,
Hmm.
and then you provide your data, whatever. Well, when you see a leak come out with your data and you see that email address, you know exactly where it came from. Even if they
Hmm.
didn't report a breach, you know exactly where it came from.
And
You know,
that empowers you as a consumer to have agency over knowing,
yeah.
where the weak spots are. But,
And what was stolen too. So if you know what information was stolen, then you know how to respond to it more effectively.
hmm.
Right.
Well, now what do you do? So so let's wrap up on the modem thing too, so we give people something actionable, because the reality is very scary, but the empowerment comes from people knowing I can do this and I can take these steps, to
Yeah,
secure myself. So so people, when they get home today, or if they're home now, what should they do after listening to this with with their
yeah.
router and their modem to secure their perimeter? What should they be doing?
Gain access to it, make sure it's up to date, and change the passwords.
That's
When it comes down to Wi-Fi, because everybody uses Wi-Fi these days, make sure you're using the most current and most secure protocols. Make sure you don't use really simple Wi-Fi passwords, like passwords that are the same as the name of the access point or
Mhm.
your home address, like one of my neighbors does.
Oh, yeah.
You
Okay.
know,
Yeah. Mhm.
um, you want to make sure that you don't make things easy, um, and then depending on how sophisticated people are or how deep they want to go, they can install really simple tools. Something on Mac that I like a lot is called Little Snitch, and then something on
Say
Windows
that
that
again.
does this little Snitch. It's
Yes.
really,
Right. Yes.
I love the name. So, and then there's a tool called Net Limiter for Windows, and what these tools do is they tell you about every single connection going in and out of your computer, and you have to approve them. At
Right.
first, it can be a bit tedious, but at least you know that when you see a connection going off to China, but you're doing nothing with China, well, it probably shouldn't happen,
Right.
right?
It
So
might be your air fryer.
it could be your air fryer or your drone or your doorbell.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
could be any
Yes.
number of things.
No,
Yeah,
that's really good.
absolutely.
And speaking of that, let's talk about reputable and non-reputable companies and types of devices. So, as far as people not having a false sense of security, but knowing where their greatest, more safety and less safety lies. Talk about the difference between, so we just had Amazon Prime Day. So you just bought, a Chinese manufactured air fryer from
Well,
China, and you're downloading the app and it's asking you for a lot of information. And you also bought a new pair of Apple AirPods.
yep.
So what's the difference in protection in those two devices for you as a consumer?
Hugely, or hugely. That's not really. uh, the difference is substantial. The products that are made overseas. So you have to remember adversaries. And when I say adversaries, I'm talking specifically on like the cyber warfare front.
Mhm.
Um, our adversaries will do absolutely anything they can do to collect whatever they can collect on us. Salty Typhoon actually is a great example that we can talk about later if you want to. But um, uh, they will use, especially state-sponsored adversaries, they'll use anything that they can to get into home networks because they know from home networks they can often get into other things and perhaps even proxy into important businesses. So if you're buying something from an adversary like an air fryer and you're connecting it to the internet, they know you're going to connect it to something. They can embed whatever they want into that, right? So you could be giving somebody the keys to everything with your air fryer.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because just today, one of the top news items was that Temu, the Chinese
Oh
Amazon,
yeah.
just reached parity with Amazon in many fronts, and its growth was so much faster. And literally right afterwards, I was speaking with somebody who had not seen that, but was talking about um, they didn't trust Amazon, and so they're using Temu. And so, but I think so. I'd like to talk about this a little bit because you mentioned cyber warfare and
Yep.
adversaries. And I think the thing is, we're not officially at declared war with any country right now in the US, and other countries aren't as well. And so people think we're in peacetime. And, back in the day in World War II and stuff, there was this loose lips sink ships, and everybody was like, you got to protect, the home front because there's spies everywhere, and we're at war. But we have the attitude that we're in peacetime. People, consumers are not really aware that there is a cyber war going on every
Oh
day. Could
yeah.
you could you talk about that and tell people some of the realities?
Yeah, the reality is that we are all living in a perpetual state of compromise. And I mean, our most critical assets, our critical infrastructure, our communications platforms, like your very provider, whether it be Verizon or Comcast or whatever, um, they're all targets in the cyber war. Now, recently, you can search the news for this. There was a major breach that was announced from Chinese advanced persistent threat, right? A Chinese threat actor called Salty Typhoon, or they called it, I think it was Salty Typhoon anyways. Effectively, this group had managed to compromise all of our communication providers, which means anybody that provides you with internet services. And not only that, in some cases, they were able to access the systems that were used for surveillance by law enforcement. Now, these people have had access, or I guess the Chinese, that particular group, have had access to our entire nation's infrastructure for an unknown amount of time.
Right.
Some of the articles will say, oh, 3 years, some will say 2 years, and then some will say, oh, yeah, we got them out of the network. Truth is, they have no idea. They have absolutely no idea. And
Right.
once these people are in, I mean, telling you from experience, right?
Right.
If we're doing a project like that and we're in a network, you're not going to get us out unless we willingly come out of the network. And it's the
Say,
same
say
thing
more
with threat
about that
actors.
because because you do
Yeah.
engagements that people, people outside of cybersecurity don't really understand what they are. So you get hired by companies to
Yep.
do exit.
What the bad guys do.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So what we really specialize in, frankly, is the same thing that the threat actors specialize in, except the difference between us and them is that we do it for the people that hire us so they can learn how the threat actors will attack them and gain access to their infrastructure. And then from
Just to be
that,
perfectly clear, threat actors is the cybersecurity profession's terminology for hackers and cyber criminal groups, because
yeah,
there's all different, there's there's state sponsored and and government
yeah,
entities.
exactly.
But threat
Yeah.
actors are anybody trying to penetrate and get access to things they should not have access to. Okay.
Yep. And so the thing that we do that's uh, unfortunately a bit too unique in the industry in terms of how it's done,
Mhm.
is we don't just identify the flaws like the vulnerabilities, right?
Mhm.
But we help people understand the behavior and how somebody will have to uh, act and the things that they'll have to do to first gain access to a network or an infrastructure, and then move from system to system to system to gain access to intelligence or information, whatever it might be. And there's an important distinction because preventing a breach is interesting, right? But it's also impossible to stop 100% of the attacks. It's an endless game. The people that are doing the defense have to get it right 100% of the time. The
Mhm.
threat actors, the bad guys, just create new ways of getting in, and one of those ways is eventually going to work, right?
Mhm.
So when we protect our customers by giving them that sort of knowledge of how threat actors, the bad guys, are going to work,
Mhm.
um, we enable them to build defenses based on that behavior. So if somebody does successfully make entry into a network,
Mhm.
our customers can prevent damages. They're not necessarily going to suffer a breach or prevent the breach because that's not really all that important anymore. What's important is that the bad guys can't get to the sensitive data because they're seen too soon. Um,
Mhm.
and we know that that's a really big problem right now, not only because of the sheer volume of data breaches that happen every single year, but because of also what's been reported. So there's this report that comes out by Verizon. It's the DIBR, the Data Breach Incident. I can't remember what it's called, right? Something report. Anyways, so the
Mhm.
Verizon DBIR um, explains, what trends were last year. What things were being exploited, what types of attacks were going around.
Mhm.
And one of the things that they talk about is how quickly businesses realize that they've been breached, right?
Mhm.
And it was years for a while. I mean, and honestly, I still think it's going to be years other than one thing. So they said, well, it's gone from months to weeks, right? In terms of detection. Sounds great. The reason it's gone from months to weeks, though, is because the threat actors are breaking in. These businesses have no idea. They take what they want, they steal the data, then they demand ransom. And so these businesses are now becoming aware because the actors are saying, hey, pay us. It's
Right.
not
Back
better
in the day when
detection.
they were just taking the data and selling it, it wouldn't be detected until the sale was somehow traced back and then became a
Yep.
known leak. Now, because they're basically have, have kidnapped their data and doing the
Yeah.
ransom. So the alert, it's a false alert. It's not from great surveillance. It's from being held up
Yeah.
at gunpoint that you know that you have a crime against you. Yeah.
Right. And it's not because your technology where your defenses did what they were supposed to do. And so, really, where people are failing at good security, or I should say, failing at effective security,
Hmm.
is in their ability to detect the behavior after a breach. Um, Detecting the breach and being able to prevent breaches up front, that's going to be a near impossibility, right? Because there's 0 days, which are indefensible things. They're vulnerabilities that an attacker knows how to exploit, but nobody else even knows they exist. You can't defend against that. But
Right.
defending against somebody actively in your network and detecting that information, that behavior, that movement is
Hmm.
something that you can do. You just have to shift focus onto that.
So it's really good to know these things are going on, even though all these things at the Verizon level and everything else, and they're not alone. It's every company on the Fortune 5,000 list. But
Right.
that people need to be aware that this is what's going on so that they don't have a false sense of security, that these really talented cybersecurity teams and all this, the hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on cybersecurity at a single company, that all of this is going to protect them 100% from their
Yeah.
data being breached. And so that's why you need to protect yourself. So you need to be aware of that in the news, that that's what's going on. That's the current state. It's kind of like back in the day, there was a time in the 50s where, in the US you could probably, leave your doors unlocked if you lived in the
Sure.
country and stuff like that. But, if you've got a cartel that's moved in, not only gone are
Yep.
those days, but you need to, put bars on your windows and other things too, if you really want to protect yourself. So not just to strike panic into people, but to make them fully aware that this is why it's so important that you put your own safety into your own hands. And you have to that's why we call this smarter online safety. We have smart people, but we all have to
Yeah.
get smarter about cybersecurity techniques and online, if we really want to have online safety.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the responsibility of the individual to frankly be paranoid and protect their information as best as they possibly can. The challenge though is, the everyday person uh, doesn't necessarily know how to protect themselves unless they're taught or they're told or it's explained to them because it's not obvious, it's not intuitive. And then, people like myself or others on my team, we're the bad guys. We know exactly how to attack everybody, right?
Right.
So it
Well, in
makes
fact,
things
I
very
love I
difficult.
love the tagline of your company.
We protect you from people like us.
Yes, yes, I
That's what
think
we do.
that's great.
Yep.
Because it's important. And I think that, just like, you have to learn how to, I think this is part of being an adult today, is that you have to, you have to learn. If you drive a car, you have to learn, how cars work, how traffic laws, you have to invest a certain amount of time in there. But once you do, you can then drive, and then you have a peace of mind knowing that you've got certain knowledge and you've got certain freedoms. And I think would you say that the same is true? Cybersecurity.
Absolutely.
You got to invest some time, but once you do
Yeah.
it, you don't have to, and you don't have to become a cybersecurity professional. That's one of the questions
No.
that people
Yeah.
say, oh my God, do I have to get a 1 year long certification in
No.
cybersecurity to protect myself? What would you say to them?
I'd say no. I mean, there's an appropriate level of awareness that everybody should have these days. Like, one of the things is, somebody's asking you for information or they're asking you for money, authenticate them. Just make sure that they're really who they say they are and authenticate them through other channels, not by asking them because they're going to say that they are who they want you to think they are, right?
Even if it's your Uncle Tom or
Absolutely. Yeah. Because
so to
AI,
get
I
an
can
email.
become your Uncle Tom. Yeah.
Yes.
And
So what
yeah, I
happens? So
mean,
if somebody that asks you something, whether it's on social media or talk about that, what if somebody gets a request, particularly about transfer of money or sharing of personal information, what should they
mhm.
do?
So it depends on who they're talking to. If it's somebody personal that they
Mhm.
know, and there's some personal experience that only the two of them have shared, they can ask about that. Hey, do you remember this time? And the scammer is going to try to say, "Oh yeah, that was great," and you can kind of dig into it and get them to show their hand, right?
Mhm.
Another
Realize if
thing that
they
you
if they
can,
don't know the answer to that, and this
then
is
they're not
not
who they
somebody
say
who
they are.
has some kind of dementia or something, you can trust that they don't know, and they're probably not who they're not who you think they
Yeah,
are.
Yeah, exactly. And then there are other things that you can do too. You can have, literal family passwords or code phrases or whatever. So if you're talking to people I mean, I've got this with all of my friends actually. If you're talking to somebody you think they will say the phrase naturally at some point during a conversation, it's them. If they don't say it, well, it's probably not them. And so you can set up different kinds of protocols to help keep yourself safe. And then when it comes down to other things like, financial institutions or vendors that you might work with, if they call you or they text you asking for something, say, hey, I'll call you back, and then call them back and see if they really called you. But don't call back the number that dialed you. I've seen people do that.
Oh
Call
yeah,
back the actual number for support and
right.
say, hey, did you guys try to reach me?
Right. Or don't call the
Um,
number of the bank in your text and on the
right.
phone that's telling you it's your bank. Go to their known good website and look at it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, always make sure that you're going to the real thing. Don't ever trust what is sent to you. Um, yeah, if anybody calls you, for example, and asks you to give them that, code that the bank will sometimes text you, don't give them the code.
Mhm.
You got the code for a very specific reason. Um, and there are scams, the Russian people that I mentioned earlier, there are scams to get around that actually to make things even more challenging, but those are much more rare. I think for the average person, authenticate, just be aware, be vigilant. Don't just trust people and say, "Oh yeah, that looks real. I've done this
Right,
before." That's not really good, you
right,
know.
right.
Yeah,
Well, that's really helpful. So let's give some people some practical advice. One is definitely on their router. Today, do not stop, do not, pass go. Go home and log into your router and update your software
yeah,
and change your password and
yeah,
make it a complex, unique password that you keep in a secure spot. And
yeah.
then also should you reset your Wi-Fi password for guests? Like let's say you
Absolutely.
if you don't know definitive, well, even if you think you know definitively who has access to your, you don't know who it's been shared with. So reset,
Right.
and anybody who needs access to it will get it from you, so that they
Yep.
can control. Okay, so there's
Yeah.
there's two great tips. And then
Yeah.
what about the IoT devices? Okay,
Do the same.
person's listening. They've got a Roomba, and they've got and they've got a drone, and they've
Yeah.
got and they've got an air fryer.
Well,
What should they do?
for the drones, I would say find a different manufacturer at this point because they're, I mean, they're designed deliberately to collect information, is what it seems like, and they're you can read up on this; it's all over the place.
Mhm.
Um, but for their air fryers or whatever else there are a few different things they can do. So most Wi-Fi routers these days support guest networks or like kind of isolated networks that are away from the home. You can create a network on your home, like a second Wi-Fi network that is only for those devices and that doesn't have access to anything else, right? So
Mhm.
there's sort of an isolative thing that you can do there that's really beneficial. But just like you would do with your router,
Right.
if you can update that air fryer, which should be interesting, but if you can update the air fryer or your
Mhm.
TV or your Roomba or whatever else you might have that's online, just
Mhm.
make sure you're up to date, you
Okay, and
know?
a lot of those, even if it's not the device, I mean, obviously with the Roomba, and anything with a camera, it is. But what about in the apps, your privacy settings?
Yeah, so it all depends on the app and on what you're using and the type of data that's being stored. But for me, when it comes down to the privacy settings, I typically always require some kind of credential to get in, whether it's a password or my face and a password or something like that.
Mhm.
I always go through the privacy settings and I'm looking for things like, well, send debug information here. I don't let my app send anything that they're not supposed to send.
Mhm.
And typically, if I can do something online, despite the fact that an app might be more convenient, I'd rather go online and do it via a web browser because I know I can shut that down and it's not seeing everything I do, right?
Right.
Now, if you look through the privacy settings for most apps too, most apps ask for way too much access. They want to
Mhm.
know your contacts, they want to track your location, they want to track the emails everything. Uh, Go in and check those privacy settings too because there's no reason that has to happen that way.
And your photos, a lot of them want access to
They all want
photos.
access to your photos.
Mhm.
That's
And there's a
it's a
difference
mystery.
between all of them and a few of them that you're going to permission. So it's
Yeah.
worth the extra time to manage your photos and only put in a few than to give them access to the thousands
Yeah,
that you know, probably on your phone.
absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, some of them, like some financial apps, they'll want access to your camera and photos because maybe you can deposit checks, right? So you
Yes.
can scan things in.
Right.
Um,
But if
but
it's a
you don't have
reputable bank, it's different than if it's your air fryer.
maybe. I mean, I would
Maybe,
still
okay.
even for reputable bank, I still say only give them exactly what they need, right?
Well, isn't
Because
it possible too, like if you don't deposit checks all the time, I mean, you can turn it
yeah,
off and you can
yeah,
enable it when you're going to do it and then turn it
yeah,
back off, right?
yeah.
That's
In fact, if you disable it, the app will ask you to re-enable it when you use it.
hmm
So you won't even have to remember to turn it back on. The app will say, "Hey, I don't have access. Give me access." Okay,
right.
cool. So, and I mean, in some cases you can do it temporarily. In other cases, you just have to remember to go back and turn it off afterwards. Yeah, I
So
mean,
yeah,
it's
and
just,
would you
go
go
ahead.
ahead? No,
I was
no.
gonna say, it's a matter of it's a matter really, I guess, of something like this, right? If the thing that you're doing has the potential to access sensitive information, or if it is accessing sensitive information, really question every aspect of it, right? Ask yourself, well, does it have to have access to all these different things? Does it have to reach out to these people? Do I need this on my phone even, right? And if the thing is just an app like, I don't know, TikTok, YouTube, whatever might be out there, any of the apps, and they're asking for information, tracking locations, whatever, do they really need to know all that?
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
so think along those lines. Um,
Would you
but yeah,
care to comment on the fact that when you are setting up permissions, it doesn't give you the option to deny access? It says ask app not to track. You want to comment
yes,
on that?
yes, that's all it does. Yeah, it doesn't. You can't deny.
Mhm.
They're very particular. But I mean, we live in a world right now where your data is our money, right? I mean, people monetize data, so it's all about collecting as much data as they can.
Right.
And of
The
course,
saying, and being based in Silicon Valley and having worked here for a couple decades, the saying always was, if the product is free, you're the if the product is free, you're the real product.
yeah, exactly.
And that's even true when you pay for it. You could be paying 20 to a couple $100 a year for a service, and they're still selling, your
Your
data.
data, yeah, yep, absolutely. It's big money.
Mhm.
Um, and
Okay, so we've got some great tips here. So number one, change your modem, change your router password and update the software and change your guest access password and re-give it to only the people, that need it so you can protect yourself. Really look at all of your IoT devices in a new way, including your Roomba and stuff. So if you're running around, getting out of the shower, and your Roomba's going, just know that there's a camera in there. We're very careful about our computers being on and being whether there's a Zoom call going or not, or a FaceTime when we're
yep,
looking at privacy, but we forget that our Roomba can see more and has more access than our computer ever will. So
yep,
so just to think about those things and delete apps that you don't need because they are background collecting data on you, which it doesn't need unnecessarily. So
yeah. And your phone's cameras, you don't always know when they're on. So yeah, be careful there too.
mhm, mhm,
Yeah, microphones as well. Um, yeah, it's a strange world we live in today.
yes. So we have walls and curtains in our physical houses, but we basically live in a glass house on a busy freeway with people from all over the world, driving by. So you
Yeah,
kind of live on a broadcast television
yeah. That's
environment
even more true today,
online,
actually.
and you have to be aware of that.
Yeah,
Mhm,
in fact, what you just said, the glass house,
mhm,
I think it's Comcast that is now pushing a service where they can use your Wi-Fi router and the Wi-Fi signal to detect if there's motion in your house, and they're going to
mhm,
sell it as sort of a security solution. You go back a few years, there was a study, well, actually, there was a device, an old project that was run. I think it was MIT, but I'm not certain, where people were looking at using the radio signals, and they successfully did it, emitted from a Wi-Fi device to paint
mhm,
a picture of the inside of your house, including the people. So,
mhm.
you're looking at privacy and you use
Right.
a solution like that, it's the same as having a camera almost.
That's
Um,
true. I think
So
it was over 15 years ago that a
yeah.
major provider of internet and cable services filed a patent on being able to detect your facial expression so that it could serve up different. What were you happy? Were you smiling
Yep.
or not smiling so that it could serve up different options of movies and shows and music to you?
Yeah.
And that
Yep.
was terrifying. You know, it still is. So,
Silverfish, I think it was. There was a, I think there was an app for that, or a piece of software. I think it was Silverfish is what it was called. But yeah, something like that.
so I
Anyways, yeah.
think that if people are a little nervous, I want to congratulate you on staying through this because you have the fortitude to be able to realize what the real situation is and decide to take action. And actually, one of the things I'd like to throw out there, we're going to be doing a 3-day online challenge just to help walk people through basics so that they know what to do. So that'll be posted below, and you can find more information on our website at smarteronlinesafety.com for that reason, because there's just foundations that everybody needs. And no, you don't have to become a cybersecurity professional, but you can get 10x safer with 5 key steps and be safer, a heck of a lot safer than you are today. And we want to help people with that. So that's great. So
Definitely.
Adriel, we have a lot of people listening who large corporations who own small businesses and are entrepreneurs, and a lot of, consumers wanting to protect themselves and their family and their money and their assets. So, for people who want to work with you, who do you help and where can they find you?
Yeah, so we typically work with businesses, but I mean our customers range from 4-person companies to some of the largest casinos and manufacturers and financial institutions in the world.
Right.
The best way to really engage is just through a website. If you hit our website, which is our domain name is spelled wrong deliberately, which is strange. So it's www.netragard. So it's netragard.com.
So know
Uh,
you, know you.
Yep. Right. Know you, which is,
Yep. And
I can't
we'll
tell
put
you.
that below on our YouTube channel and in our email and all everywhere we have text below
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
podcast. But that's great.
That's,
And then they can reach out and to find out how you could help their
yeah.
company be safer and things like that.
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah. I mean, if they go there, they can click on the button that either says contact us or request a quote. They both do the same thing.
perfect.
Uh, it'll immediately let them schedule and do whatever. Yeah.
Awesome. And if you're a consumer listening and you love Adriel the way we do here at Smarter Online Safety, he's agreed to be back on our show more than once here. So you're going to get some
Sure.
more great tips from him in the future. And I just really want to thank you. You know, I always thank first responders when I see them. I thank them for their service. And I also view our cybersecurity professionals like yourself. I mean, you literally are on the front lines of this cyber war every day. I want to thank you for your service. You have had a big impact on how we as consumers are protected and on educating people of what they need to do to stay safe. So thank you so much for that.
Pleasure. It's my pleasure. Yeah.
That's
I,
great. All right, everybody. And we got some great tips and we're putting them down below and they'll be in our, if you haven't signed up for our email newsletter, do that. And then we summarize these tips as well. And if you could, if this has been helpful to you, please like, subscribe, share with, any of those or all of them with anybody that you care about to help them be safe. And keep an eye out for our online safety challenge coming up because we want to help you learn the basics so you can stay safer. We're giving you all the the difficult information here that's hard to swallow when you learn what's really going on. And we realize that that can be demoralizing or overwhelming. And so we want to correct that by helping you get 10x safer quickly. So we'll be putting you'll see that coming shortly. And Adriel, thank you. What a gift you've given us today.
pleasure. Anytime.
Awesome. All right. So until next time, everybody, take those steps that Adriel told you about. And until you see us again, stay safe out there.